There comes a point in every story where consequences need to be made in order to create a serious atmosphere for not only the characters but the readers that are experiencing these events. And for this video, that consequence I'm talking about is death. It's easily the most memorable and emotional part of any story, this especially being the case for Naruto. There's only few shonen that I personally know that don't hold back any limits when it comes to killing off characters, and there seems to be a shared opinion with the few friends I talk to in regards to this subject. Naruto always been the series to pop up the most within conversations. And to make this clear, I'm not saying characters need to be constantly killed off to make a story good, but it does help create stakes and set the right tone of the world you have been thrown into. For example, the reason why the deaths in Naruto and let's say Attack on Titan work to further enhance the quality of the story is because if you really look at it, both series are about war and the continuous cycle of hatred, and so for this cycle to continue, lives will be lost. While Attack on Titan is a behemoth on its own that could be tackled another time, for Naruto it's always been about children of war, forcing kids to grow up quickly into a world that's stained with blood. Death forces each character to grow up in different ways, leading into why the event of death is just so memorable in Naruto, as it's not just built on shock value alone, but instead a multitude of reasons which many overlook. And with that being said, this makes it a topic worth discussing in more detail. But before I start, this video will of course contain examples of character deaths within the series, so I feel like I don't need to say this due to obvious reasons, but just in case, there will be spoilers ahead. So with that out of the way, why not start with the very first death in the series. Kishimoto really sets the tone of the world that Naruto has been thrown into at the start of the series. While the first few chapters start off relatively goofy and immature, this was all because these events were surrounded by the childlike demeanor that was Naruto Uzumaki. I've mentioned this before in a previous video, but to put it simply, Naruto didn't understand the dangerous field he was getting himself into, not realizing how big and dangerous the world he's grown up in truly is. This childlike mindset becomes forced to get to grips with reality, however, once he embarks on his first mission, meeting an enemy whose skills far exceeds anything Naruto is able to comprehend. This is even shown with characters like Sasuke. The boy who always had a serious demeanor was now frozen in place, the bloodlust atmosphere of the demon in the mist overwhelming his emotions as he considers ending his life before even engaging in a fight. The first bout of Kakashi and Zabuza really set the stage of what ninja battles were all about, setting the level that characters such as Team 7 must eventually overcome if they're to survive in the future. And while this encounter with not only Zabuza but Haku later on demonstrated the skill the next generation must match up to, it also set the stage of what being a ninja was all about. So if anything, Zabuza and Haku were the perfect reference sheet to how ninjas truly functioned within the world, from the start and right up to the very end. The battle on the bridge is where the deeper meaning of what being a shinobi meant to each character arises. This being a key moment for Haku, as he expresses how he never really had a purpose in life due to his mistreatment as a child, yet being accepted by Zabuza was what gave him that purpose to move forward. And while it is a situation where Zabuza took advantage of that low point of Haku's life to craft him into the perfect companion, it's almost like Haku has always realized that and just didn't care. He was now seen as an individual that was needed, and that's all he ever wanted, even if it meant becoming a tool. It also turns out that part of this mindset is shared with Zabuza in regards to becoming a tool, as he's perfectly aware how he himself is just another tool for the many that recruit his services. Naruto is witnessing the true essence of a shinobi and what he's expected to live up to in the future, yet there's something clearly wrong in all this that even Naruto manages to realize. The reason why the Land of Waves arc is held up to such a high regard is because of how, even though it's the first story arc within the series, it's really just a setup to show what the typical life of a shinobi is all about, from the start right up to the very end as mentioned before. And so there's no better way to showcase this through the actions of Haku, sacrificing his life to save Zabuza in order to successfully become the perfect tool for him right to the very end. From the outside, Zabuza appears to not show show any remorse for the death of his partner, considering him just as a disposable weapon, as it's that way of thinking that has gotten him through this line of duty. However, once Zabuza's employer Gato shows up, it becomes the breaking point for Naruto to watch Haku's dead body get kicked around like a dog, while Zabuza continues to show no remorse whatsoever. This moment in the series is without a doubt one of the biggest moments to remember, built upon the core beliefs of the concept of ninjas in Naruto and their purpose, as I've stated before, letting the audience know that it's a much deeper situation than just the typical mindset of ninjas serve the purpose of being powerful and cool looking. The value of this moment is further emphasized with how the anime handles it, making this particular episode look gorgeous through some brilliant character acting, as this scene is built more so on the emotional aspect of the situation rather than the fight itself. It's still so impressive to this day to rewatch, especially when watching a young Naruto come to tears at how disgusting and miserable he finds the life of a shinobi to be, just living his life to become a tool for others with no sign of remorse whatsoever, questioning if this is the future that awaits him if he himself is to match up to the quality of the elite. These few words of desperation manage to get through to Zabuza, as it's like we see a whole other layer to him that was not visible to the outside due to him compressing it this entire time, admitting that even if he is just a tool, he's still capable of having emotions just like any other human. That side of him becoming more relevant thanks to his time spent with Haku, and with his humanity restored, Zabuza decides for his final farewell he'll act on his emotions, delivering such a memorable and gritty last stand as he fights against the shinobi system that brought him to this very moment. And the final words he delivers to Gato, showing how even though he's let his emotional state take over, he reminds his employer that he's still the demon shinobi of the mist that was responsible for the hundreds of cold-blooded murders throughout his life.
We wouldn't be welcome where Haku's gone to. Hell's where we're going, Gato! I can't think of a more fitting destination for a demon ninja, can you? Oh yes, I should fit right in. You, on the other hand, Gato, well, I fear you're in for a long and very painful eternity!
The last thing you see from a character will most likely be the most important and last memory you have of their actions. And so to have a moment like this where the big rogue villain of the arc switches up the tables and commits to their own beliefs finally, just makes them shine even more. This isn't even mentioning how this is all considered an atonement for the way Zabuza treated Haku, as he expresses during his final moments when placed beside him, wanting to be beside him as the comrade Haku always wanted. It's such a beautiful moment that tugs on the heartstrings immensely, especially since these were the main villains of the arc, showing just how brilliantly done the writing was to make the audience feel this way. It also marks a very early yet crucial moment in Naruto's life, as this was the path he didn't want to go down, a path that had no regrets and one that was not made for the sole purpose of being a tool. It's the moment where he decides to create his own ninja way, being a staple within the series of the mindset he'll never go back on, a path that's his and his alone that no one can change. So for Zabuza and Haku, while their deaths can be seen as something very small compared to the grand scheme of things later on, it's not a death to undermine. It set up what the life of a shinobi entails and how corrupt and cruel the system is, where only the strongest are able to fight back for what they truly believe in, even if it might seem all too late. Plus, on a less deeper level, the events that take place are just really captivating, from Haku's sacrifice to Zabuza's tears, becoming such an iconic and strong start for a story as the arc leads into a bittersweet memorable end that you just can't possibly forget. Passing the torch onto the next generation is a core theme of Naruto that runs from the start all the way to the end, yet it has a whole different meaning when that torch is forced upon you when you yourself are not ready. There is no greater way to describe this principle than through the death of Asuma, as it's where Team 10 are forced into a predicament where they have to reach the expectation that's needed of them in terms of becoming full-fledged shinobi. And the reason why I say this is forced on them is because it's both literally and symbolically a moment they were not ready for. Besides the obvious of the passing of their teacher, each teammate still had more lessons to be taught by Asuma that would help develop them as adults. This is made more evidently clear clear through Asuma's final words, as it's obvious it was something he wanted to teach them, but due to knowing his time had come, his final speech offers them encouragement to the type of people they can be if they learn to tackle their own retrospective weaknesses. While Asuma isn't a character who's been in the story as frequently as characters like Kakashi or any of the other main cast till only up to this moment, Kishimoto still manages to pull off his death in an effective emotional manner due to the amount of weight this moment holds for Shikamaru, a character that most who have been watching or reading the series up to this point care for. Not only does he blame himself for Asuma's death, but he becomes trusted with what his teachers passed on to him. It's completely overbearing for Shikamaru, as the anime demonstrates this perfectly through an entire episode dealing with his grief. It's a moment the manga never had, but desperately needed to show the human nature of his character, and thanks to some great animation, direction, and color schemes, it works perfectly. This episode really is one of the most underrated gems of the entire franchise, as it takes you through so many different emotions. Starting off, we've never seen the village be this lively before, especially with children running around and enjoying carefree lives. Asuma refers to the children as the true kings that the current generation must protect. This is something Shikamaru learns about through Asuma's death, which makes sense to why we suddenly notice a lot more attention towards the children directly after his passing, as we're witnessing it all through the path that Shikamaru takes, with it being something he wasn't aware of till this very moment either. There's also great sound design for the entirety of the episode, like the absence of any music whatsoever on the day of Asuma's funeral, or the violent crashing of equipment when Shikamaru informs the death of Asuma to a local shopkeeper, interrupting the atmosphere of a lively village for a brief moment. The colour scheme, as mentioned before, is absolutely superb. The colours being very dim and grey for the first portion of the episode to symbolise the life that has been lost because of Asuma's death, to the dark blue colour palette that's used for Shikamaru's breakout of grief, creating a somber, depressing atmosphere. Going back a few minutes, this scene is absolutely the best moment of the episode, as we witness Shikamaru playing a game of shogi with his father. It's such a beautiful scene, and is easily one of the best and most underrated interactions within the franchise, as this exact shot is held for 2 minutes straight to show how emotionally drained of a moment this becomes for Shikamaru, as his straight back posture becomes more hunched over as the conversation continues. This scene is so important because while Shikamaru is now part of the generation that needs to step up, he's still seen as the king within his father's eyes, being there to care for him to grow up into the role he needs to fill. And due to the emotions Shikamaru is holding in, his father is aware that the first step to getting through grief is letting out all those emotions that you are holding back from your true self, leading to this break of realization from Shikamaru.
Let it out, boy.
The direction of this episode really just makes you emphasize more and more for Shikamaru the longer it continues, until he finally devotes himself to constructing a plan that this time it won't have any faults within them. Witnessing this entire turnaround of Shikamaru's character to where we get to see him mature into the fully realized shinobi he always had within him makes his character all the more amazing and fascinating to watch, as it makes moments like his revenge towards Hidan just all the more incredible and rewarding. Shikamaru has always been such a fan favorite character, and when talking to friends about him, he always solidifies his spot within the top character list because of the arc he goes through. He was always one of the best characters to read / watch due to his smart way of thinking, but having him experience a moment revolved around the cycle of life and death really adds to the beauty and depth of his character, as Shikamaru always just wanted an easy life. Asuma was never a major character, yet his purpose in the series has always been to bring out the potential he always saw within Shikamaru, being referenced all the way back to the Chunin exams. Asuma was always that push Shikamaru needed, right from the start until the very end. So, with that being said, it's a wrap for this video. Unfortunately, I couldn't go too in depth with most of the examples used here due to the sheer amount I wanted to talk about, but hopefully I've managed to convey the key points of the sheer importance of death within Naruto. And of course, there's many deaths I haven't touched upon, but maybe sometime in the future I'll revisit this topic, as there are certain characters that need their own individual videos like Jiraiya and Itachi. But for now, I think these two separate events were a good enough demonstration of how Kishimoto doesn't use death as just an emotional element, but as a way to create new perspectives, ambitions, and life within his story. However, if there's anything you'd like to talk about and how you felt death was handled within the series, then feel free to start your discussion below and I'll be sure to check it out. And if you did like anything I've said in the video, then please give the video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I upload my next video. It's for free and lets me know if you like the content I'm currently pushing out. So if you're at least a slight bit interested, you might as well stick along for the ride. And with this, thank you all so much for watching the video to the very end. Hope you all have a great day and bless.